What's going on, everybody? Today's episode is going to be a little bit different. I made this video last year and I wanted to do it again. I have put the 2024 NFL Draft into Madden, and we're going to have Madden franchise mode predict what's going to happen during this year's draft. The NFL Draft is very unpredictable. EA Sports is also pretty unpredictable, so we put 2 and 2 together and we should get a pretty fun result. For those of you who enjoy my Madden content, I think you might enjoy my NFL Draft content as well. I have a second channel where I talk a lot about the NFL Draft along with real-life sports as well. So I recommend you check that out, especially with plenty of the draft content coming over the next week or so. So let's not waste any time and let's get this show on the road. We're going to go through each of the first-round picks in depth and then go through the later rounds a lot quicker. We'll start with the Bears at 1. Not really much of a debate who they should pick, as they go with Marvin Harrison. Yeah, no. I'm going to let EA do what it wants for the most part, but for the number 1 pick, I feel like we've got to make sure that it's Caleb Williams, the obvious choice. This is what the Bears are going to do on Thursday next week. It's a foregone conclusion as soon as they traded Justin Fields. And for me, it was a conclusion as soon as they got the number 1 pick. That'll bring us to the Commanders at 2. Which quarterback do they end up picking? Okay, they picked Jer'ZhanNewton out of Florida State. I like Jer'ZhanNewton. I think he's a good player. This is objectively not a very good pick. Even if Jer'ZhanNewton came out and was like a 90 overall off the bat, that would be disgusting. Marvin Harrison to New England. They had their choice between the 2 quarterbacks, Drake May and Jayden Daniels, and they picked neither. I don't think this pick in a vacuum is as bad, especially if they don't get their choice of the quarterbacks, which they won't. Washington's going to pick one. But I'm still a little surprised by that. Dallas Turner to the Cardinals at 4. I'm very surprised by this. Malik Neighbors is there. If you prefer Rome Odunze, that works. But they go with Dallas Turner. I can't say I agree with that. The LA Chargers with the 5th pick select J.C. Latham out of Alabama. Things are coming off the rails fast here. Again, they could have picked either of the receivers. I know Jim Harbaugh likes his linemen. Joe Alt, I think, makes more sense. But they go with J.C. Latham. I feel like this would be like a weird top 5 pick that could have like a non-zero chance of happening. This definitely has a 0% chance of happening. Talise Fuanga to the Giants with the 6th pick. And Fuanga's not a bad player, but here at 6, over the quarterbacks, over the receivers, I don't get it. Tennessee picks Brock Bowers. All right, then. Joe Alt was right there. This isn't horrible. Brock Bowers is a good player. But with the need they have at tackle, I cannot get behind this. That'll bring up Atlanta. The 2 receivers still there. And they pick neither. They go with Byron Murphy. This, again, isn't as bad as some of the other picks we've seen. Receiver isn't that big of a need for Atlanta. Byron Murphy's an awesome player. And that brings up the Bears at 9. They got Caleb Williams earlier. They have Neighbors and Odunze still there. They get their choice of the 2. And sure enough, we finally have Malik Neighbors off the board. There's a chance that one of these 2, probably Odunze, makes it here to the 9th pick, which would be a home run for the Bears. But instead, they get to pick between the 2. How did we let them get Caleb Williams and Malik Neighbors? The Jets at 10 go with Joe Alt. I'm expecting the Jets to pick a pass catcher, especially considering they signed Tyron Smith and Morgan Moses. But both of those guys are older. They could obviously use some youth on the offensive line. And if Joe Alt somehow is on the board at 10, he won't. But if he is, I would not blame them at all. Now we've got Minnesota, Denver, and the Raiders. This has worked out so well for them because all the quarterbacks are still on the board. So Minnesota finally stops the slide. They pick Jayden Daniels. I personally prefer Drake May. That's who I would pick here. I think he's a better fit within the Vikings offense, and I think they would prefer May to Daniels. But the fact that all these guys fell to 11 is such a win. And for Denver, oh my goodness, you get Drake May at 12? Sign me up. I've been in the notion that Denver will and probably should draft Bo Nix. But now they get Drake May to fall to the 12th pick. The Raiders don't necessarily have to pick a QB like these 2 teams, but it's certainly still a need. Ultimately, they'll go with Terrion Arnold, the corner out of Alabama. I don't have a problem with this pick. I like Arnold a lot. I think he's going to be probably my 2nd-ranked corner in the draft. I prefer Quinion Mitchell a little bit, but Terrion Arnold's a great player. No major complaints. I don't think the Saints have any chance of going with a QB. I don't want to hear it. They signed Derek Carr for a while. He's sticking around. They go with Olu Fashanu, the tackle out of Penn State. This selection makes a lot of sense. They could use some help on the offensive line, and I think the value here for Fashanu at pick 14 is appropriate. The Colts are an interesting one. There's probably about 10 different players they could pick here, and Chop Robinson was none of the 10 I would have been thinking of. This definitely feels too early for Chop. I could see a team really falling in love with the athleticism and the quickness and the explosiveness, especially a team like the Colts, who really values overall athleticism, but that still feels rich. This feels really rich. TJ Tampa out of Iowa State, the second corner off the board. I wouldn't have a problem with this for Seattle if it was like the 16th pick in the 3rd round. They don't really need corner, and the value is not good. So, double whammy. The Jaguars get Troy Fautanu. This pick really surprises me because wide receiver and corner look like the two spots that they could go with here. You have Quinion Mitchell still on the board. By the grace of God, you have Rome Odunze still on the board. But instead they go with Fautanu, who I don't think is going to make it this far. I think he's really good. Another guy who I think is a total stud is Amarius Mims. He goes to the Bengals here at 18. I think Mims might be the most underrated, highly regarded prospect in this class. I think he should go at minimum in the top 15. Steal for the Bengals, although passing on Odunze is something. Quinion Mitchell finally off the board. He goes to the Rams. This would be a fantastic pick. Need, player, fit, checks all the boxes. I don't think he's going to make it this far. I think he probably will be the first corner off the board. I think he should. This really works out for the Rams, and that'll bring us to the Steelers. Imagine Rome Odunze in this offense, but instead they go with Laiatu Latu, a pick that really doesn't make a whole lot of sense. The Steelers have a number of needs, and edge rusher is not one of them. Latu's a really good player. I guess it doesn't hurt to add more pass rushers, but that feels pretty foolish. The Dolphins get Graham Barton, another guy who I really like, very versatile offensive lineman. He can play pretty much every different spot. The Dolphins have a few holes on the line. Of course, Robert Hunt left for Carolina. You could plug him into guard. You could plug him into center. You can make him a long-term tackle. The Eagles pick Tyler Guyton, very on brand, I feel like, for the Eagles, being a year ahead in terms of the offensive line, getting somebody who you can develop. The Lane Johnson replacement is another Oklahoma Sooner. And that brings us to the Vikings, who lucked out with Jaden Daniels falling to 11. And now they can have Rome Odunze fall. I know they don't really need receiver at all. And sure enough, they don't pick Odunze. They go with Jer'ZhanNewton, which would be a pretty good pick here. I don't think Minnesota's going to keep this pick. I imagine they're going to package their 2 picks to move up for one of the QBs. But obviously this scenario works out a lot better. Jordan Morgan to the Cowboys. Okay, what's going on for Rome Odunze? Dallas kind of needs a receiver. Jordan Morgan's a cool player, and Dallas is another team who likes to be ahead of the curve with their offensive linemen. But, man, I don't get this. And Rome Odunze in Green Bay, please no. They don't pick Odunze, thank the Lord. They pick Nate Wiggins instead, which wouldn't be a bad pick as a substitute. I don't think receiver's that big of a need at all for Green Bay, but giving them a true alpha would have been nasty. That'll bring up the Buccaneers, your long-term Mike Evans replacement possibly, or J.J. McCarthy. Sure, that works too. First of all, McCarthy falling to 26 feels very unreasonable. And second of all, the Bucs, who just paid Baker Mayfield. McCarthy doesn't want to be there at all. Look at the -5 morale boost. The Cardinals passed on Odunze at 4. We felt like that would make a lot of sense for them. He's on the board at 27, and they still say no. They picked Jackson Powers Johnson, my guy, go Ducks. In a vacuum, not a bad pick. But who is Kyler Murray going to throw the ball to? You had 2 chances to pick Odunze, and now Buffalo's here. They've been linked to trading up for him. And he falls all the way to the 28th pick where they scoop him up right in front of Detroit. That's, first of all, mean. Second of all, how? Did Odunze pull off a Laramie Tunsil? Did they find a video of him smoking a bong or something? First of all, it's the big 2024. I thought we moved off of that. Second of all, that is unfair. Odunze without trading up. Chris Braswell goes to the Lions here at 29. I can't say I'd be too big of a fan of this pick. I don't love the value. Obviously, edge rusher certainly in play, but I think there are better ones on the board. The Ravens get Cooper DeJean. That would be a fun pick here at 30. Their secondary is a little bit weak, especially at corner. DeJean can play just about anywhere in the back end. If he makes it here, I think this would be a sick pick for them. The 49ers at 31 pick Brian Thomas. Oh my, that offense would be something else. Obviously, receivers not some big need for them. If they trade away Brandon Ayuk, maybe it is. So could this be a precursor that they're looking to move on from Ayuk? And with the 32nd pick, the Kansas City Chiefs will select Kool-aidMcKinstry. I don't think this is very likely. I get that they lost L'Jarius Sneed, but they've picked a lot of young defensive backs in later rounds who have shown a ton of flashes. Obviously, receiver feels like the obvious pick here. And with the receivers falling, you have your choice of any of the non-top 4. We'll go through this pick for Carolina as well. The Panthers fans have not had a lot to get excited about. I'm not sure how excited they get about this one. Kamari Lassiter, fun player, slow as dirt, and he can't play receiver or any offensive position for that matter to help Bryce Young. So for that, I don't know if that's necessarily a great pick. So with that, we're going to simulate. We'll see where these other quarterbacks like Bo Nix and Michael Penix go, with both of them falling out of the first round. Really, other than Bo Nix for me, none of these players making it out of round 1 is that shocking, and even Bo Nix making it out of the first round isn't far-fetched either. Bo goes to the Cardinals. You think that's bad? Michael Penix goes to the Chargers. Okay, I don't know about that one. Xavier Worthy to the Giants. That's an interesting pick. Him and Jalen Hyatt is quite the fast duo. Adonai Mitchell to the Texans. Who needs Nico Collins anyway? Does this mean he's on the move? Brad, pick up the phone. Keon Coleman to the Steelers. Ladd McConkey to the Dolphins. Interesting picks there. Chiefs finally get their receiver with Jalen Polk. Blake Corum to the Panthers to start the third round. Spencer Rattler goes to the Giants. That's one that actually could make sense. Now, the Giants had their chance of all the quarterbacks at the top. Didn't pick any of them for whatever reason. Trey Benson to Green Bay. Can't say I like that. They also get Michael Pratt, which is sort of funny. Into the fourth round, Bucky Irving ends up in New England. Ricky Pearsall to the Titans. I don't know how he made it to the fourth round. I think Ricky Pearsall's a baller. Joe Milton to the Colts. Instead of Anthony Richardson, they now have Anthony Richardson at home. And then rounding out the fourth round, we've got Will Shipley to Minnesota. That's a fun pick. Into the fifth round, we've got Kyrie Jackson to New England. I feel like he's the type of guy Bill Belichick would pick in the 20s, which, unironically, he's going to go a lot closer to the 20s than in the fifth round. The Dolphins get a quarterback, Austin Reed out of Western Kentucky. And the Lions, for Lord knows what reason, pick a fullback with Michael Hall going with the next pick. Although the fullback was 8 rating points higher, so maybe the game knows more than me. My favorite part of round 6 was Dylan Laub and Cody Schrader going back-to-back. That has to be a first. 2 white running backs going back-to-back. And then in the 7th round, Emory Jones gets picked. For one thing, Emory Jones I don't think is even in the draft. There are a couple guys in this class late who ended up going back to school. I think the bigger thing is, how the hell is Emory Jones getting drafted? I don't get that. I mean, Joe Milton in round 4 is one thing, but that, yikes. So from there, we're going to simulate the season. We're going to take a look at who won the Rookie of the Year, take a look at the standings, see which rookies ultimately impacted their teams the most. If you're hoping for a new Super Bowl matchup, sorry, you ain't getting it. Chiefs-Niners round 3, and this time San Francisco gets the edge 24-21. Marvin Harrison wins the Rookie of the Year in New England, and Peyton Wilson in New Orleans, who I assume they picked in round 2, wins the Defensive Rookie of the Year. So New England goes 14-3 with nobody throwing the ball. The Raiders go 13-4 with Gardner Minshew throwing the ball, so apparently quarterback just doesn't matter anymore. Marvin Harrison can carry the team on his own. The NFC was a little bit more reasonable. All the same playoff teams from last year except for the Falcons replacing the Bucs. So pretty chalky. Not a great first year for a lot of the rookie starting quarterbacks. The Bears weren't very good. The Vikings were not very good. The Broncos were pretty mediocre. So that's going to wrap up the episode. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Fun to see how hilariously wrong Madden ended up being. In last year's iteration of the video, they had Will Levis going number 1. So we know this game isn't the brightest. Hope everyone enjoyed, though. Make sure to leave a like and subscribe to the channel if you are new. Peace out.